I'm Jason. The world is yours, and today we're talking about office occupancy in New York finally hits 40%. First time city has reached milestone since the start of the pandemic. The glass is almost half full for New York City office landlords. Office occupancy pushed past 40% last week for the first time since the start of the pandemic, the city reported. The city reported increased to 41.2%. It said the measured office occupancy by entry into office buildings. The attendance level represented a jump of nearly 5% from the previous week. COVID cases numbers have been falling for about 6 weeks in the state, considering how they have seesawed in the past 2 years, it's too soon to say the rise in occupancy will be sustainable. Nevertheless, real estate leaders celebrated the milestone. This is good news for our city's recovery as the presence of office workers in the central business district is critical for retailers, restaurants, and other storefront businesses hit hard by the pandemic. Occupancy has surged in the past few months toward the end of last year. Attendance cratered as the Omicron variant gave New Yorkers a serious scare. Occupancies dipped as low as 10.6%. Even as more workers report to the desk, the overall office picture remains gloomy. A report from the city comptroller estimated that office values decline could cost the city $600 million in annual property tax revenue. The city office market has a vacancy rate of only 16%, while the sublease vacancy, hold on, where did it go? While the sublease vacancy rate is only 5%. Both are higher than they were during recent economic crisis. A team recently estimated that by 2029, the city office buildings will drop in value by 28% or $49 billion. We don't have to really know about that. The return of people to office is uneven across the country. Commuting remains one of the biggest obstacles for people returning to the office. Why would commuting remain one? I don't think commuting is one of. As many have grown comfortable sliding out of bed and getting to work without sitting in traffic or taking mass transit. Nationally, office occupancy has hit 44% last week, also the highest since the onset of the pandemic. 3 Texas cities leads the charge, spearheaded by more than 60% occupancy in Austin, Texas. But fewer than a third of workers are back in the office in my former city, San Francisco, California, where the occupancy rate hovers around 31%. So basically, is that the low? I don't know if that's the low. I would imagine it's pretty close to the low. But San Francisco, my former city, nothing but love for that city. Currently, occupancy rate for office buildings is at 31%, very low. Austin is at the high. Is it at the high? Yeah, Texas. Austin is at the high at 60%, so twice what San Francisco is doing, but still only 60%, right? So we're not talking about 70, 80, or 90% back in Texas, only 60%. So if that's the high, that shows that, a lot of places are still very, very low. Nationally, office occupancy is only hit 44%. We're still talking about less than half of offices are occupied throughout the entire country. So we will, sooner or later, we're going to have to rethink office space in these cities. We're talking about 2 years later, with San Francisco down to 31%. They're going to have to redevelop that, or to, different, maybe make it housing or something, because you can't have only, you can't have 69%? Is that 69? Is it 69? Right? 69% of your office space empty, right? And if even in Texas, where 40% in Austin is just empty space. So we're gonna have to figure that out, especially being 2 years later. I don't expect all these offices to just stay empty for the next 2 years. So we will have to figure out what's going to happen with some of these office spaces. Keep an eye on office occupancy in San Francisco, in Austin, and in New York City. New York City at 41%, San Francisco at 31%, and Austin, the leader, at only 60%. So we don't have any occupancy rate above like 60%. You would think that some places would have been 60 or 70, 80, almost 90%, but that's not happening. Nationwide, only 44% office occupancy rate 2 years after the start of the pandemic. I would imagine these offices will sooner than later have to be sold or rezoned, and the idea of offices in certain of these areas will have to basically go away, right? Because at a 60% vacancy rate, that's completely unsustainable. They said, what was it? New York is going to lose almost $600 million, right? Let me see. It says the office estimated that the office values declines could cost the city $600 million annual property tax revenue. So sooner than later, New York is going to have to repurpose this land and rethink about office occupancy. Let me know, which city do you live in? What's the office occupancy in your city? I live in Las Vegas, so I'm gonna have to look that number up. But I'm Jason. The world is yours. Today we were talking about office occupancy. San Francisco I don't know if it's at the low, but for the most part, San Francisco at 31%. New York City finally hits 40%. In Austin, Texas at the high. The high is only 60%. Thank you for watching.